I discovered my twin sister was dating someone 3 decades younger than her on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon that would fracture our lives into before and after. The text message appeared on my phone while I was folding laundry in my bedroom. Whites still warm from the dryer, the scent of lavender detergent filling the air. The message was from my sister, and it contained only a photo with a single word: happy. In the image, she stood next to a young man whose arm wrapped possessively around her waist. Her smile was radiant, almost manic in its intensity, a brightness I hadn't seen in her face since before her divorce 5 years ago. The young man looked barely old enough to have graduated college. My sister was 53. He couldn't have been older than 23, maybe 25 if I was being generous. My name is Cressida. My twin sister is Galatea. We came into this world together on a freezing January morning in 1971, two souls who shared the same womb, the same first breath, the same childhood bedroom with its yellow walls and collection of porcelain horses on matching white shelves. For 53 years, we had been each other's mirror, each other's compass, each other's first call in any crisis. I knew her face as well as my own because it was my own. The same deep-set brown eyes, the same slightly crooked nose we both broke falling out of the same tree when we were 9, the same stubborn chin our mother always said came from our father's side. I knew when she was lying, when she was afraid, when she was pretending everything was fine while her world crumbled around her. And looking at that photo, studying the desperate quality of her smile and the calculated ease in the young man's posture, I knew something was terribly, deeply wrong. But before we get going, please leave a comment telling me which state or city you're watching from. And please don't forget to like and subscribe so this channel can grow and I can bring you more compelling stories. The text that followed the photo arrived in fragments over the next 20 minutes, each message more breathless than the last. His name was Riven. They had met at a gallery opening 3 months ago. He was an artist, a sculptor working in reclaimed materials. He understood her in ways no one else ever had. He saw past her age to the real person inside. He made her feel alive again, vibrant, desired. The messages came rapid fire, each one a small detonation of alarm in my chest. 3 months, and she was only telling me now. 3 months of secret dates and whispered phone calls and a relationship she had hidden from the person who knew her best. I called her immediately. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, and when she did, her voice had that high, strained quality it took on when she was defensive. "I knew you'd be upset," she said before I could speak. "I'm not upset. I'm concerned. You didn't tell me for 3 months. Because I knew you'd react like this." "Like what? I haven't even said anything yet." "You don't have to. I can hear it in your voice, that tone, that judgment." I took a breath, trying to keep my voice level and calm. The white cotton shirt in my hands was twisted into a rope from how tightly I had been gripping it. "I'm not judging you. I just want to understand. He's 30 years younger than you. That's a significant age difference. So what? I'm happy. Isn't that what matters?" "Of course that matters, but I need to know this person isn't taking advantage of you." Her laugh was sharp and bitter. "Taking advantage? Of what? My vast fortune? My glamorous lifestyle? I'm a divorced art teacher living in a rental house, Cress. What exactly do I have that someone would want to take advantage of?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with all the things she wasn't seeing. Her pension from 28 years of teaching, the settlement from her divorce, the modest inheritance our parents had left us, the small but valuable collection of paintings she had accumulated over the years, the life insurance policy she had taken out when she was young and healthy. To her, these things were nothing, just the ordinary accumulation of an ordinary life. But to someone with nothing, to someone young and hungry and willing to play a long game, they could be everything. "Just let me meet him," I said. "Let me take you both to dinner. I want to see you happy. I want to meet the person who makes you smile like that." There was a long pause. I heard voices in the background, a male voice asking who she was talking to, and her muffled response as she covered the phone. When she came back, her voice was cooler. "He's right here. We're having lunch. I'll call you later." She hung up before I could respond. I sat on my bed surrounded by half-folded laundry, my phone still pressed to my ear, and felt the first tendrils of real fear wrap around my heart. This wasn't like her. Galatea had always been the careful one, the planner, the twin who read all the reviews before choosing a restaurant and researched every purchase for weeks before buying. She didn't do spontaneous, she didn't do secretive, she didn't do young men who materialized out of nowhere and made her hide things from the person she had never hidden anything from in her entire life. I looked at the photo again, zooming in on the young man's face. He was handsome in an almost sculpted way, with sharp cheekbones and artfully tousled dark hair that probably took more time to style than he wanted to admit. His eyes were pale, maybe blue or gray. It was hard to tell in the lighting. He wore a white linen shirt unbuttoned just low enough to suggest carelessness, and his smile showed very white, very straight teeth. Everything about him looked curated, perfected, designed to appeal. He looked like every romance novel cover come to life, and that was precisely what worried me. I spent the rest of that day in a fog of anxiety, unable to focus on anything. I burned dinner, something I never did. I snapped at my husband when he asked what was wrong. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling while he slept beside me, trying to tell myself I was overreacting, that my protective instincts were going into overdrive for no reason. But the feeling wouldn't leave, that sick certainty that something was very wrong, that my sister was walking into a trap she couldn't see. The next morning, I did what I had done countless times before when I needed to understand something. I started researching. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table with my coffee growing cold beside me and began searching. I found his social media easily enough. His artistic name was just Riven, one word, like he was already famous enough not to need a surname. His feed was full of moody black and white photos of twisted metal sculptures, carefully composed shots of him working in what looked like a warehouse studio, shirtless and covered in photogenic smudges of dirt and oil. His followers numbered in the thousands, mostly young women leaving heart emojis and thirsty comments. But as I scrolled back through his posts, something began to trouble me. The photos of his artwork were frequent and consistent, but there was almost nothing personal. No family photos, no old friends, no pictures from his childhood or college years. His online presence seemed to begin about 2 years ago, as if he had sprung into existence fully formed as this artistic persona. I dug deeper. I searched for his name in conjunction with art galleries, exhibitions, sales. I found a few small mentions, a group show here, a pop-up there, nothing major. For someone who presented himself as an up-and-coming artist, his actual footprint in the art world was remarkably small. What I did find, buried in the comments section of an obscure art blog, was a different name attached to a photo that looked very much like him, Riven Holloway. And when I searched that name, a different picture began to emerge. There was a lawsuit from 2 years ago, a breach of contract case brought by a gallery owner who claimed he had failed to deliver commissioned work after accepting a substantial advance. There was a small article in a local paper about a charity art auction where several pieces had turned out to be reproductions rather than originals, though no charges had been filed. There was a marriage license from when he was 21, and a divorce decree 18 months later, the same year he seemed to have reinvented himself with the single-name persona. The pieces didn't fit together into a clear picture yet, but they sketched the outline of someone who was not what he appeared to be. I screenshot everything, saved it all into a folder on my desktop. I told myself I was being thorough, protecting my sister the way we had always protected each other. I told myself I would present her with the evidence calmly, rationally, and she would see reason. But deep down, I already knew that wouldn't work. When my sister had made up her mind about something, when she had invested emotionally in a narrative, facts alone would never be enough to change it. I needed more than circumstantial evidence and public records. I needed to see what he was really doing, what his actual intentions were. That's when I decided to follow him. The decision came to me fully formed on a Thursday morning, a week after I first saw the photo. I had been lying awake since 4 a.m, my mind cycling through scenarios and worries, when it suddenly clicked into place with perfect clarity. I would follow him. I would document what he did when my sister wasn't around. I would find out who he really was, what he really wanted, and then I would have the evidence I needed to protect her. The thought should have felt crazy, like something from a thriller movie, but instead it felt inevitable, like the only logical next step in a problem that required solving. I am a librarian. I have been for 26 years, working in the same suburban branch library where I started as a shelver fresh out of college. I live a quiet life with my husband in a quiet house on a quiet street. I have never followed anyone in my life. I have never even gotten a speeding ticket. But when I thought about my sister, about the desperate brightness in her smile and the calculated ease in his posture, I knew I would do whatever it took. I started by learning his patterns. I called Galatea and suggested lunch, just the two of us, sister time like we used to have every week before he appeared. She agreed, though she sounded distracted, and we met at a cafe near her house. She talked about him the entire time, barely touching her salad, her hands moving expressively as she described his latest sculpture, his philosophical approach to art, his tragic childhood. Every detail she shared I filed away. He worked out of a studio in an old industrial building downtown. He taught a sculpture class on Tuesday and Thursday evenings at a community center. He didn't have a car. He rode a vintage motorcycle that he had restored himself. He was staying temporarily with a friend while he looked for a place of his own. "Where does his friend live?" I asked casually. She hesitated. "I'm not sure exactly. Somewhere on the east side, I think." "You think? You've never been there?" "He says it's not really set up for visitors. You know, guy living situation probably a mess." Red flag. Another one to add to the growing collection. A man in his 20s with no permanent address, no stable living situation, suddenly very interested in a woman with a house and savings and stability. "What about his family?" I asked. "Have you met them?" "They're not close. His parents were very controlling, very disapproving of his art. He had to cut ties to preserve his creative spirit." I nodded, filing that away too. Convenient. No family to verify his stories, to provide context, to warn her. After lunch, I hugged her goodbye in the parking lot and told her I loved her. She hugged me back, hard, and for a moment she felt like my sister again. Not this stranger wearing her face and making reckless choices. Then she pulled away and got into her car, and I watched her drive away with my heart breaking. That afternoon, I went to the industrial building where he kept his studio. It was a massive brick structure that had once been a textile mill, now divided into dozens of small rental spaces for artists, small businesses, and storage. I parked across the street and waited. 3 hours I sat there, my car's air conditioning running, pretending to read a book while I watched the entrance. Artists came and went, recognizable by their paint-stained clothes and portfolios. A delivery truck arrived and unloaded boxes. A woman with a small dog stopped to let it relieve itself on the scrubby grass by the parking lot. Finally, at 5:30, he emerged. He was wearing the same carefully disheveled style from his photos, artfully ripped jeans and a faded band t-shirt, his dark hair falling just so across his forehead. He didn't walk to the parking lot. Instead, he went to the side of the building where a row of motorcycles were parked under a metal awning. His was easy to spot, a vintage bike in deep blue with chrome accents that gleamed even in the fading light. He straddled it with practiced ease, kicked it to life, and roared out of the lot. I followed him. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I had never tailed anyone before, and I was terrified he would notice me, but he seemed completely oblivious, weaving through traffic with the confidence of someone who owned the road. He headed east, away from downtown, into a neighborhood I didn't know well. The buildings got shabbier, the streets narrower. He turned down an alley, and I slowed, not wanting to follow too closely, and by the time I turned the corner, he had disappeared. I drove slowly down the alley, looking for any sign of the motorcycle. I found it parked behind a rundown apartment building, tucked between a dumpster and a chain-link fence. I parked on the street and waited again, unsure what I was waiting for, just knowing I needed to see more. I didn't have to wait long. After about 20 minutes, he emerged from the building's back entrance. But he wasn't alone. He was with a woman. She was young, maybe 30, with bleached blonde hair and too much makeup. She was laughing at something he said, her hand on his arm, familiar and possessive. They walked to a different motorcycle parked near his, and she climbed on behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. They rode off together, her blonde hair streaming behind them. My hands were frozen on the steering wheel. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The implications of what I had just seen were crashing over me in waves. He had told my sister he was staying with a friend temporarily, but that woman had emerged from the building with the easy comfort of someone who lived there, and the way she touched him, the way he smiled at her, that was not friendship. I waited until they were out of sight, then I got out of my car and approached the building. It was a 3-story walk-up with peeling paint and windows covered in sheets instead of curtains. The directory by the front entrance was broken, several names scratched out or faded to illegibility. But one name on the 3rd floor was written in fresh marker, Holloway. He lived there, with her. While he was dating my sister, while he was making her feel special and desired and alive, he had a whole other life in this run-down building on the east side. My sister didn't know. She couldn't know, because if she knew, even she wouldn't be able to rationalize it away. I drove home in a daze, barely seeing the road, operating on autopilot. My husband was in the living room watching television when I came in, and he looked up with a smile that faded when he saw my face. "What's wrong?" I told him everything. About the photo, about my research, about following him, about what I had seen. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned with each detail. "You need to tell her," he said when I finished. "She won't believe me. She'll say I'm jealous or overprotective or making things up because I don't approve. You have to try. She's your sister. I need more. I need something she can't deny, can't explain away." He was quiet for a long moment. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to follow him again. I'm going to document everything, and then I'm going to find out exactly what he wants from her." Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. I took vacation days from work, something I almost never did. I spent my days following him, learning his routines, documenting his life. I discovered that his schedule was precisely calculated. He was with my sister every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evening, staying at her house overnight, playing the devoted boyfriend. On Tuesday and Thursday evenings, he taught his sculpture class, a legitimate gig that lent credibility to his artist persona. But the rest of his time was divided between the blonde woman from the apartment and a rotating cast of others. There was a wealthy older woman he met for lunch twice, both times at expensive restaurants where she paid the check. I took photos of them from across the street, his hand covering hers on the table, his smile intimate and warm. There was another woman, closer to his age, who he met at coffee shops and walked with through the park, their conversations intense and private. And through it all, he maintained his social media presence, posting artful photos and inspirational quotes about authenticity and truth, building his brand while lying to everyone around him. I created a detailed timeline, cross-referencing his social media posts with his actual activities. A post about working late in his studio, uploaded at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, while I had photographic evidence of him at a bar with the blonde woman at that exact time. A heartfelt caption about the importance of honesty in relationships, posted on a Wednesday morning after he had spent Tuesday night with someone who wasn't my sister. The contradictions were damning, but I needed more than photos of him with other women. I needed to understand his endgame, what he was actually trying to get from my sister. So I started investigating his finances, or at least what I could find of them publicly. His studio rent was cheap, $75 a month for a space in the collective. His motorcycle was paid off, registered in his name. But he had no credit cards, no car loan, no mortgage, no public financial footprint beyond the basics. He lived off cash and charm, never spending his own money when he could spend someone else's. I watched him carefully at an art supply store one afternoon, pretending to browse canvases while he filled a basket with expensive materials. Oil paints, fine brushes, specialty tools. At the register, he pulled out a credit card. I positioned myself to see the name on it. It wasn't his. It was a woman's name, someone I didn't recognize. He used it without hesitation, signing the receipt with a flourish, and left with his supplies. That night, I searched the name from the credit card. She was 58, a widow, living in an upscale neighborhood across town. Her social media was private, but her profile photo showed an attractive woman with silver hair and kind eyes. I felt sick. How many were there? How many women was he cultivating, manipulating, extracting resources from? I needed to see his living space, to understand what he was hiding there. The opportunity came on a Saturday afternoon when I saw him leave the apartment building on his motorcycle, the blonde woman riding with him. I waited 15 minutes to make sure they weren't coming back. Then I approached the building. The front door was supposed to be locked, requiring a key or a buzzer code, but it was propped open with a brick. The stairwell smelled like old cooking oil and mildew. I climbed to the third floor, my heart pounding, every nerve screaming at me to turn back. His apartment was 3C. I stood outside the door for a full minute, listening. Nothing. The hallway was empty, silent except for the muffled sound of a television from one of the other units. I tried the door handle, not expecting it to turn, but it did. Unlocked. Either they had left in a hurry, or security simply wasn't a concern in a building like this. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The apartment was small, maybe 600 square feet, divided into a main room that served as living room and bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom I could see through an open door. But what struck me immediately was how impersonal it felt. There was a futon with rumpled sheets, a small television on a plastic crate, a card table with 2 folding chairs. No artwork on the walls, no books, no photographs, no personal items that might reveal anything about who really lived there. It looked like a temporary space, a place someone was passing through, not a home. I moved quickly, carefully, trying not to disturb anything. The kitchen had minimal supplies, some canned food, a few dishes in the sink. The bathroom had 2 toothbrushes, women's makeup scattered on the narrow counter, a cheap shower curtain covered in mildew. I went back to the main room and opened the closet. Women's clothes mostly, the blonde woman's wardrobe, but on one side, pushed back, were men's clothes. Nice clothes. Expensive designer labels, still with tags attached. A leather jacket worth at least $500. A silk shirt, Italian shoes. Stolen? Gifts? I took photos of everything, my hands shaking so badly I had to brace the phone against my body to keep the images from blurring. I opened the drawer in the card table. Papers, mostly bills in the blonde woman's name. But underneath, I found a notebook. I pulled it out and opened it. It was a ledger of sorts, but not a normal one. The pages were filled with names, dates, and dollar amounts. I recognized my sister's name immediately. Beside it were entries. Dinner, $127. Art supplies, $340. Motorcycle repair, $280. The amounts went back 3 months, every expense he had managed to extract from her, documented in careful handwriting. Below her name were others. The widow from the art supply store, the wealthy woman from the restaurant, the younger woman from the park. Each had their own column, their own running total. At the bottom of the page, in larger writing, was a number. $45,000. My vision blurred. I felt like I might be sick. This was a game to him, a calculated operation. He wasn't just casually taking advantage of vulnerable women. He was systematically targeting them, tracking his extractions, working toward a specific financial goal. And my sister, with her teacher's pension and her inheritance and her desperation to feel desired again, was just another mark. I photographed every page of the notebook, my fingers fumbling with the phone. I was so focused on documenting everything that I almost didn't hear the sound of the motorcycle pulling up outside. I froze. Through the window, I could see him parking the bike. The blonde woman was climbing off, laughing about something. They would be inside in minutes, maybe less. I shoved the notebook back in the drawer exactly as I had found it, swept my gaze around the room to make sure everything else looked untouched, and ran for the door. I slipped out into the hallway, just as I heard their footsteps on the stairs below. There was no time to make it down. They would see me. I looked around desperately and saw a door marked with a faded exit sign, the roof access. I pushed through the door and found myself in another stairwell, this one narrower and darker. I climbed quickly, quietly, and emerged onto the flat roof of the building. The door closed behind me with a soft click. I pressed myself against the wall next to the door, breathing hard, listening. I heard them enter the hallway below, heard the blonde woman's voice saying something I couldn't make out, heard their apartment door open and close. I waited on that roof for 20 minutes, my heart gradually slowing, the adrenaline leaving me shaky and weak. When I finally felt safe to move, I found the fire escape on the far side of the building and climbed down, emerging in a different alley. I walked back to my car on trembling legs, got inside, locked the doors, and sat there while my hands shook on the steering wheel. I had the evidence. I had proof of what he was doing, proof that couldn't be explained away or rationalized. The notebook, with its careful accounting of his scams, the photos of him with other women, the timeline of his lies, everything my sister needed to see the truth. But as I drove home, I realized that evidence alone might not be enough. My sister was in love, or at least she thought she was. She had invested 3 months of hope and excitement and renewed self-worth in this relationship. Showing her proof that it was all a lie would devastate her. It might make her retreat further into denial, might make her angry at me for invading his privacy, for not trusting her judgment. I needed to be strategic about this. I needed to make sure she could see the truth without feeling attacked, without her defenses going up so high that she couldn't hear me. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with all my evidence spread out before me, photos printed on regular copy paper, screenshots of social media posts and public records, the timeline I had created, and the photos from the notebook, the smoking gun that proved this was all premeditated fraud. My husband sat across from me, his face grave. "When are you going to tell her?" he asked. "I need to figure out the right way. If I just dump all this on her, she'll shut down." "Maybe you should go to the police." "And tell them what? That a man is dating my sister and also dating other women? That's not illegal. Even the money, he's not stealing it. They're giving it to him willingly. It's fraud. It's elder abuse. She's 53, not 83. Legally, she's just a competent adult making bad choices. So what's your plan?" "I'm going to talk to her. Show her some of it, not everything at once. Start with the other women. Let her process that. Then, if she still won't listen, I'll show her the notebook." It sounded reasonable when I said it out loud. Controlled, strategic, the way a librarian would approach a complex research problem, break it down into manageable pieces, present the information in a logical sequence, allow time for processing. But this wasn't a research problem. This was my sister's heart, and I was about to break it. I called her the next morning. She sounded happy when she answered, lighter than she had in months. "Hey, Cress, what's up? Can we have lunch?" "Just us. I want to talk to you about something." The lightness in her voice dimmed. "This is about him, isn't it? Please, just meet me. 1 hour." We agreed to meet at a quiet restaurant, the same place we used to go for lunch when our mother was dying and we needed to escape the hospital for an hour. Neutral ground, familiar ground. I arrived early and chose a table in the back corner, away from other diners. I had brought a folder with select pieces of evidence, not everything, just enough to start the conversation. Photos of him with the wealthy woman at lunch, photos of him with the blonde woman, printouts of his social media posts with timestamps that didn't match reality. She arrived exactly on time, wearing a new dress I had never seen before, something younger and tighter than her usual style. Her makeup was more dramatic than normal, her hair styled in a way that was trying too hard. She looked like she was wearing a costume of youth, and my heart broke a little more. She sat down across from me and folded her hands on the table. "Okay, I'm here. What did you want to talk about?" I took a breath. "I need to show you something, and I need you to keep an open mind. Cressida, I swear to God, if you've been spying on him, just look. Please." I slid the folder across the table. She stared at it like it might bite her, then slowly opened it. I watched her face as she looked at the first photo, him with the wealthy woman, their hands touching across the table. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "So he had lunch with someone. So what? Look at the date. That was last Tuesday. You told me he was working late at his studio that night." She flipped to the next photo, him with the blonde woman, her arms around his waist on the motorcycle. The color started to drain from her face. Who is she? I don't know her name, but he lives with her, in an apartment on the east side. That's his friend's place, he told me. It's not his friend's place, it's their place. Her name is on the lease. His name is on the mailbox. She was shaking her head, but her hands were trembling as she shuffled through the other photos. Him with the younger woman in the park. Him at the art supply store using someone else's credit card. Him leaving the apartment building with the blonde woman, both of them laughing. You followed him. Her voice was flat, dead. Yes. You followed my boyfriend. You spied on him. I was trying to protect you. From what? From being happy? From finally having someone who cares about me? You don't have to. I can hear it in your voice, that tone, that judgment. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice level and calm. The white cotton shirt in my hands was twisted into a rope from how tightly I had been gripping it. I'm not judging you. I just want to understand. He's 30 years younger than you. That's a significant age difference. So what? I'm happy. Isn't that what matters? Of course that matters. But I need to know this person isn't taking advantage of you. Her laugh was sharp and bitter. Taking advantage? Of what? My vast fortune? My glamorous lifestyle? I'm a divorced art teacher living in a rental house, Cress. What exactly do I have that someone would want to take advantage of? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with all the things she wasn't seeing. Her pension from 28 years of teaching, the settlement from her divorce, the modest inheritance our parents had left us, the small but valuable collection of paintings she had accumulated over the years, the life insurance policy she had taken out when she was young and healthy. To her, these things were nothing, just the ordinary accumulation of an ordinary life. But to someone with nothing, to someone young and hungry and willing to play a long game, they could be everything. This doesn't prove anything, so he has friends. So he's friendly with other women. That doesn't mean he's cheating on me. He lives with one of them. You don't know that. You're making assumptions because you can't stand to see me with someone younger, someone exciting. You've always been jealous of me. The accusation hit like a slap. Jealous? Of what? Of everything. Of the fact that I was the pretty one, the artistic one. Of the fact that now I have someone and you're stuck in your boring marriage with your boring life. I felt like she had reached across the table and gutted me. That's not fair. None of this is fair. You had no right to follow him. You had no right to invade his privacy. I had every right to protect my sister. I don't need protecting. I need you to be happy for me. She stood up, grabbing her purse. I reached across the table and caught her wrist. There's more, things I haven't shown you yet. Please, just sit down and listen to me. She yanked her arm away. I don't want to see any more of your so-called evidence. I don't want to hear any more of your theories. I want you to stay out of my life. Please don't do this. No, you don't do this. You don't get to control my choices. I'm done. She turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving me sitting alone at the table with my folder of evidence and my shattered heart. The waitress approached cautiously, asking if I still wanted to order lunch. I shook my head and left money for the water we hadn't touched. I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried. Not delicate tears, but huge, gasping sobs that left me breathless. I had tried to save her, and instead, I had driven her away. She would go back to him now, tell him everything I had shown her, and he would have explanations for all of it. Perfectly reasonable explanations that she would want to believe. And the wall between us would grow higher and thicker until I couldn't reach her anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from her. Lose my number. 3 words, and they cut deeper than anything she had said in the restaurant. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then I drove home and told my husband that I had failed. He held me while I cried, stroking my hair, murmuring that it wasn't my fault, that I had done everything I could. But I knew I hadn't. I still had the photos of the notebook, the proof of his systematic fraud. I had held back, trying to be gentle, trying to ease her into the truth, and all I had accomplished was pushing her further into his trap. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing from her. She didn't answer my calls or respond to my texts. I drove past her house twice and saw his motorcycle parked in her driveway both times. I imagined them inside, him reassuring her that I was crazy and jealous, her believing him because the alternative was too painful. The thought made me physically ill. Then, on a Saturday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Cressida, it's Galatea. Her voice sounded strange, hollow. I sat up straight, my heart starting to pound. Are you okay? Can you come over? Right now. I need to talk to you. Of course. I'm leaving now. I drove to her house, breaking every speed limit, my mind racing through possibilities. Was she hurt? Had he done something to her? The motorcycle wasn't in the driveway when I arrived, just her car. I parked and ran to the front door. It opened before I could knock. She looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen and red, her hair unwashed, still wearing what looked like pajamas even though it was almost noon. She stepped aside to let me in without a word. The house was a mess, so unlike her usual careful tidiness. Dishes piled in the sink, mail scattered on the counter, her coat thrown over a chair instead of hung in the closet. She walked to the couch and sat down heavily. I sat beside her. What happened? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. You were right. The words should have felt like vindication, but they just felt like ash. Tell me. After I left the restaurant, I went to his studio. I was so angry at you, so sure you were wrong. I was going to tell him everything you had shown me, and we were going to laugh about it together. She swallowed hard. But when I got there, the door was open a crack. I heard voices inside. His voice and a woman's voice. I waited. She needed to tell this at her own pace. They were talking about money. She was asking him when he was going to get the rest of it. He said soon, that I was close to signing over power of attorney. Her voice cracked. Power of attorney. He's been working up to asking me to give him legal control of my finances. My blood ran cold. Did you? No. He mentioned it last week, said it would be helpful for when he needed to do things for me while I was at work, but I hadn't done it yet. I was going to, though. I was going to sign the papers this weekend. She put her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. I put my arm around her and she collapsed against me, crying the way we used to cry as children, huge and unrestrained. I'm so stupid, she gasped between sobs. I'm so fucking stupid. You're not stupid. You wanted to believe someone loved you. But you knew. You tried to tell me, and I called you jealous. I said those horrible things to you. I don't care about that. I care about you being safe. She pulled away, wiping her face with her sleeve. There's more. I waited until they finished talking and he left. Then I went in. The woman was still there. She's his business partner. Business partner? That's what she called it. She said they've been running this together for 2 years. They target lonely women, usually older, usually with money. He romances them, gets them to give him access to their finances, and then they drain the accounts and disappear. Everything I had suspected, confirmed in the worst possible way. Did you confront her? I asked her why they do this. She just shrugged and said some people are easy marks. Her face twisted. That's what I am, an easy mark. Did you tell him you know? Not yet. I don't know what to do. If I confront him, he'll just disappear. But if I don't, he'll keep pushing for the power of attorney. I took a breath. This was the moment. I have more evidence. Things I didn't show you at lunch. Things that prove this isn't just about you. I pulled up the photos on my phone, the ones from the notebook. I showed her the ledger with her name, with the running total of what he had extracted from her. Then I showed her the other names, the other totals. She stared at the screen, her face going from pale to gray. How many? At least 5 that I found, probably more. She made a sound like something breaking inside her. I didn't even realize. He never asked for money directly. It was always little things. Can you spot me for dinner? I forgot my wallet. Can you buy these art supplies? I'll pay you back. Can you cover the motorcycle repair? I'm waiting for a commission payment. None of it was real. The struggling artist thing, the tragic childhood, the deep connection. It was all designed to make you want to take care of him. She nodded slowly. What do I do? This was the question I had been waiting for, the one I had prepared for. We go to the police. We show them everything I found. We make sure he can't do this to anyone else. Will they even care? I gave him the money willingly. It's fraud, romance fraud. And if he's been doing this systematically, if he's been targeting vulnerable people, they'll care. That evening, we went to the police station together. The detective who took our statement was a woman in her 40s who listened without judgment, taking careful notes. She looked at the photos from the notebook with particular interest. This is good evidence, she said. It shows clear premeditation and a pattern of targeting. We'll need to contact the other victims, verify their stories, but this could definitely lead to charges. How long will it take? I asked. Depends on how cooperative the other victims are, whether they're willing to press charges. Some people are too embarrassed to come forward, but I'd say a few weeks to build the case, maybe a month. And in the meantime? My sister asked. He doesn't know I know. He thinks everything is fine. The detective shook her head. If she breaks it off, he'll know something's wrong. He'll figure out she found out somehow, and then we lose any chance of catching him in the act. What do you mean, catching him in the act? I asked. The power of attorney. If he's been pushing for it, we can use that. Set up a controlled situation where he asks for it, where we can record him explaining what he plans to do with it. That kind of evidence is gold in fraud cases. My sister went very still. You want me to pretend to give him power of attorney? A fake one, yes. One that looks real, but has no legal standing. We set it up, you meet with him, and we record the conversation. If he explains his plan, tells you what he's going to do once he has access to your accounts, that's conspiracy to commit fraud. That's a real charge that will stick. I looked at my sister. Her face had gone pale again, but there was something else there too, a kind of cold fury I had never seen in her before. I'll do it, she said. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of my life. My sister had to keep seeing him, keep pretending everything was fine, while we worked with the police to set up the sting. She had to smile when he kissed her, laugh at his jokes, let him sleep in her bed, all while knowing exactly what he was. The toll it took on her was visible. She lost weight. Dark circles appeared under her eyes. Her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. I wanted to tell her to stop, that no amount of justice was worth what it was doing to her. But she was determined. He's doing this to other people right now, she said. While I'm playing along, he's probably targeting someone new. I have to stop him. The police identified 3 of the other women from the notebook. The widow agreed to cooperate, once she realized she wasn't the only victim. The wealthy woman refused, too embarrassed to admit she had been conned. The younger woman had moved out of state and couldn't be reached. But the widow's testimony, combined with my sister's, was enough to build a case. The detective set up the sting for a Friday evening. My sister told him she had the power of attorney papers ready, drawn up by a lawyer, and asked him to come to her house to sign them. He agreed immediately, his eagerness barely disguised. The police installed tiny cameras in her living room and wired her with a microphone. I waited at the police station with the detective, watching the video feed on a monitor, my stomach in knots. He arrived exactly on time, that calculated smile on his face. My sister let him in, and through the camera I could see how hard she was working to appear normal. They sat on the couch and she pulled out the papers. They looked official, complete with a notary seal that the police had arranged. This seems pretty comprehensive, he said, flipping through the pages. So, once I sign this, I can access your accounts? Make transfers and withdrawals? For household expenses and bills, yes. That's what it says. He smiled wider. And what if I wanted to make larger transfers? Say, to my business account for a big commission project. Would you need to do that? Well, I've been thinking. I have an opportunity to buy into a gallery collective. It's a big investment, but it would really launch my career. If I could just borrow, say, $20,000, I could pay you back in 6 months. My sister's hands clenched in her lap. 20,000? I know it's a lot, but this is my big break, baby. And once I'm successful, I can take care of you the way you deserve. What if I can't afford to loan you 20,000? His smile faltered slightly. You have your pension, your inheritance. I know you have it. How do you know about my inheritance? You told me, remember? That night after we made love, you said your parents left you and your sister a little something? She hadn't told him that. I knew because I had been there the day our parents' will was read, and she had agreed with me that we wouldn't tell anyone the exact amount. He had researched her, probably had accessed public records of the estate settlement. I don't remember saying that, she said carefully. He leaned in, putting his hand on her knee. Baby, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine, right? That's how relationships work. I take care of you, you take care of me. And if I don't want to loan you the money? His expression changed just for a second. The mask slipped and something cold and calculating showed through. Then I guess I'd have to wonder why you're making me sign this power of attorney at all. I mean, if you don't trust me with your money, why trust me with access to your accounts? I do trust you, she said, but her voice was shaking now. Do you? Because it feels like you're testing me, like maybe someone's been putting ideas in your head. He was staring at her intently now. Has your sister been talking to you? In the police station, I stopped breathing. The detective beside me leaned forward, watching the screen. My sister just wants me to be careful, my sister said. Your sister is jealous. She can't stand to see you happy. She wants you to be as miserable as she is in her boring little life. I had used almost those exact words to describe him. He was trying to isolate her, to drive a wedge between us that would make her completely dependent on him. My sister loves me, my sister said, and her voice was stronger now. Your sister is trying to control you, but you don't need her anymore. You have me. And once you sign those papers, we can be a real team. I can manage your money properly, make sure you're taken care of. And what happens to my money after you take care of me? He smiled, not understanding that it was a trap. Well, I'd invest it wisely, make sure it grows. Maybe in my gallery collective, maybe in some real estate opportunities I've been looking at. You'd be a partner in everything. And if those investments don't work out, they will. You have to trust me. Show me the gallery collective. Show me the documents, the business plan. His smile froze. It's not that formal yet. It's more of a handshake deal. So there is no gallery collective. There is. It's just early stages. What about the sculpture commission you were waiting on? The one you needed the motorcycle repair for? That's still pending. For 3 months? He pulled his hand away from her knee. Why are you interrogating me? I'm just trying to understand where my money would be going. Your money. He stood up, his face flushing. That's what this is about? You want to keep everything for yourself while I'm over here struggling? You told me you were a successful artist. I am. I just need a break. A real opportunity. I thought you understood that. I thought you believed in me. I did believe in you. I believed everything you told me. Something in her tone must have warned him because his expression changed again. The anger drained away, replaced by calculation. What's really going on here? I know, she said simply. Know what? About the notebook, about the other women, about all of it. For a long moment he just stared at her. Then he laughed, a sound without humor. You've been talking to your sister. I saw the notebook myself. I know what you are. He looked around the room, his eyes moving quickly, and I knew he was looking for cameras. You're recording this. Does it matter? You bitch. The words were flat, almost conversational. You stupid, desperate bitch. You thought you were setting me up, but you just screwed yourself. Everything I took from you, you gave willingly. Every dollar. You can't prove anything. I can prove you planned it. I can prove you targeted me and 4 other women. I can prove systematic fraud. He moved fast, reaching for the papers on the table. The detective was already moving, speaking into his radio. Go, go, go! Through the camera, I saw the front door burst open. 2 uniformed officers rushed in, followed by the detective. My sister backed away from him quickly, and one of the officers grabbed his arm, spinning him around. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. Elder abuse? She's 53. That's not elderly. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Put your hands behind your back. He fought them, but it was over in seconds. They had him in handcuffs, reading him his rights. He was screaming now, saying she had entrapped him, that none of it was admissible, that his lawyer would destroy them all. The officers led him out, still shouting. My sister stood in the middle of her living room, shaking. The detective approached her carefully. You did great. That recording is exactly what we needed. Is it over? Not quite. There'll be a trial and you'll have to testify. But we have him. He's not going to hurt anyone else. I arrived at the house 15 minutes later, breaking every speed limit. I found my sister sitting on the couch, still shaking, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders even though it wasn't cold. I sat beside her and pulled her into my arms. We stayed like that for a long time, not speaking, just holding each other the way we used to when we were children, and the world felt too big and scary. Thank you, she finally whispered. For what? For not giving up on me, for protecting me even when I told you to leave me alone. You're my sister. I'll always protect you. She pulled back, looking at me with red-rimmed eyes. I said terrible things to you. You were in love, or you thought you were. People don't think clearly when they're in love. It wasn't love. I know that now. I wanted it to be love so badly that I ignored every red flag. I wanted to believe someone could see past my age and my boring life and want me for me. Your life isn't boring. Compared to him, to what he pretended to be, it felt boring. But you know what? I'd rather have boring and real than exciting and fake. Over the next few months, the case built momentum. The widow came forward publicly, telling her story to a local news station. The publicity brought forward 3 more victims, women he had targeted before I started tracking him. The evidence was overwhelming. His apartment was searched, and they found more notebooks, more ledgers, going back 2 years. In total, he had defrauded at least 8 women of more than $70,000. His trial was quick. With the recording from my sister's living room and the testimony of multiple victims, his public defender advised him to take a plea deal. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud and financial exploitation. The blonde woman, his partner, was also arrested and sentenced to 3 years. They tried to blame each other, to claim the other one had been the mastermind, but the evidence showed they had been equal partners in the operation. My sister testified at his sentencing hearing. She stood in front of the judge and told her story calmly, without crying, without anger. She explained how he had targeted her vulnerability, how he had systematically isolated her from her family, how he had manipulated her into almost signing over her financial autonomy. When she finished, the judge thanked her for her bravery and told her that her testimony had potentially saved other women from the same fate. When it was over, we walked out of the courthouse together into bright sunshine. She turned her face up to the sky and took a deep breath. I feel like I can breathe again, she said. Good. I want to do something. What? I want to start a support group for women who've been through this, romance fraud victims. There's so much shame around it, so much self-blame. I want to create a space where people can talk about it without judgment. I looked at my sister and saw someone I hadn't seen in a long time. Not the desperate woman from the photo, not the broken woman from after the confrontation. This was the sister I had grown up with, strong and purposeful, and determined to make something good out of something terrible. I think that's a wonderful idea. She started the group 3 months later, meeting in a community room at the public library where I worked. 6 women came to the first meeting, including the widow. They sat in a circle and shared their stories. Some cried, some were angry. All of them had been made to feel stupid for falling for the scams, and all of them found relief in knowing they weren't alone. The group grew. Within a year, there were 15 regular members. My sister became a vocal advocate for stronger laws around romance fraud, testifying before the state legislature about the need for better protections. She was interviewed for articles and podcasts. She took her shame and transformed it into power. As for me, I went back to my quiet life, my supposedly boring existence. But it didn't feel boring anymore. It felt safe and real and valuable. My husband, who had supported me through every moment of the investigation, who had held me while I cried and encouraged me when I doubted myself, felt like the truest blessing I had. My work at the library, helping people find information and resources, felt meaningful in a way it hadn't before. And my sister and I, we were closer than we had been in years. We had lunch every week, just the two of us, and talked about everything. She told me about the group, about the women she was helping. I told her about my day, about the patrons at the library, about the small moments that made up a life. We never talked about him unless it was in the context of the work she was doing. He didn't deserve any more of our energy than that. 1 year after his arrest, almost to the day, we met for lunch at our usual place. She looked different now, lighter somehow. She had cut her hair short, started dressing in a way that felt authentic to her, rather than trying to appeal to anyone else. She had started painting again, something she had given up during her marriage and never returned to until now. "I've been thinking," she said over salad, about how you saved my life. I didn't save your life. I just did what sisters do. No, you did more than that. You trusted your instincts when everyone, including me, was telling you that you were wrong. You put yourself at risk to protect me. You followed him, you broke into his apartment, you built a case against him. You did all of that because you loved me. Of course I love you. You're my sister. I know. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what you did, what you risked, and I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that I have a sister who loves me enough to do the impossible." I reached across the table and took her hand. I would do it again. I would do it 1,000 times. She squeezed my hand. "I know. And I promise you'll never have to. I've learned my lesson. The next time I fall in love, if there is a next time, it's going to be with someone real, someone honest, someone who doesn't need to be followed. How will you know? I'll trust my instincts, and if my instincts fail me, I'll trust yours." We sat there in the restaurant, two women who had been through fire and come out stronger, our hands clasped across the table. Outside, the world continued turning, full of predators and victims, con artists and marks. But in that moment, we were safe, we were together, and we were survivors. The story could have ended there, with lessons learned and justice served, but life is rarely that neat. 6 months after the trial, I was at work when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Cressida?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Odalis. I'm calling about my brother. I think you're the one who got him arrested." My blood ran cold. "Your brother?" "His name is Riven. Well, that's what he calls himself now. I call him by his real name, but that doesn't matter. I wanted to thank you." I sat down at my desk, my legs suddenly weak. "Thank me?" "For stopping him. I've been trying to stop him for years, but he's my brother, and I didn't know how. I didn't know it had gotten this bad." "How did you find me?" "Court records. I've been following the case. I saw your sister's testimony. I wanted to call her, but I was too ashamed, so I'm calling you instead." "What do you want?" "I want to apologize, on behalf of my family, for what he did, for what we didn't stop him from doing." I was quiet for a long moment. "It's not your fault." "It is, though, at least partly. I knew he was troubled. I knew he was manipulative. Our parents knew too. We just didn't want to admit how bad it was. We told ourselves he was just going through phases, that he'd grow out of it. And then he was an adult and we couldn't control him anymore. We just hoped he wouldn't hurt anyone too badly. He hurt a lot of people. I know. I've read about all of them. And I want you to know that our family has been in touch with the Victims Assistance Program. We're trying to help pay back what he stole. That's not your responsibility. Maybe not legally, but morally, yes, it is. He's our family. We should have stopped him sooner." I thought about that conversation for days afterward. The idea that this man who had seemed to appear from nowhere, who had no history and no family, actually had people who loved him. People who knew what he was and tried to convince themselves he wasn't that bad. People who were now living with the guilt of their inaction. I told my sister about the call. She listened quietly, and when I finished, she was thoughtful. Do you think it would have helped? She asked. If his family had done something sooner? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe he would have done it anyway, just been more careful. I wonder how many other people like him are out there. How many families are telling themselves their brother or son or cousin isn't that bad, while someone like me is getting hurt. It was a sobering thought. The idea that for every predator caught, there might be dozens more operating freely, protected by family denial or simple indifference. The thought made me angry, a cold fury that settled in my chest and stayed there. Maybe that's another thing your group could address, I said. Education, teaching people to recognize the warning signs, teaching families that they have a responsibility to act. She nodded slowly. I like that. Prevention instead of just recovery. And that's what she did. The support group expanded to include educational programming. They created materials about romance fraud, about the common tactics scammers used, about the red flags people should watch for. They partnered with adult education programs and senior centers to present workshops. They even worked with the police department to create a task force focused specifically on romance and financial fraud. The work she was doing reached beyond our city. Articles about her advocacy appeared in national publications. She was invited to speak at conferences. A documentary filmmaker approached her about telling her story. She declined, saying she didn't want to center herself when there were so many other victims who deserved to be heard. But she did agree to be interviewed anonymously, her face obscured, her voice disguised, telling her story as a warning to others. I watched my sister transform from victim to advocate to educator, and I felt a pride so fierce it sometimes brought tears to my eyes. She had taken the worst experience of her life and turned it into purpose. She was saving people, dozens of them, maybe hundreds over time. People who would never know that their decision not to sign over power of attorney or to end a suspicious relationship came from information she had helped create. As for the man who had called himself Riven, he served his 5 years. I know because I tracked his release date, wanting to be prepared if he tried to contact my sister. He didn't. According to his sister, who called me once more before losing touch, he was released to a halfway house in another state and was required to register as a financial offender. His ability to open bank accounts or get credit cards was severely limited. His face and real name were now searchable online, linked forever to his crimes. The carefully constructed persona he had built was destroyed, and the real person underneath, damaged and manipulative and cruel, was all that remained. My sister never spoke his name after the trial. If she had to reference that time in her life, she called it the incident, or when I was being scammed. She refused to give him the power of being a person in her memory. He was just a thing that happened to her, like a car accident or a bout of illness. Something to recover from and learn from, but not something to carry forward into the rest of her life. 3 years after his arrest, on a warm spring evening, my sister called me with excitement in her voice. I need you to come over, right now. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Just come, and bring your camera. I drove to her house confused and a little worried. When I arrived, she was standing in her driveway with a huge smile on her face. Behind her was a man I didn't recognize, tall and gray-haired, probably in his late 50s, with kind eyes and an uncertain smile. Cressida, this is Thaddeus. He's a teacher at my school. We've been seeing each other for a few months, and I wanted you to meet him. I looked at this man, this stranger who was clearly nervous about meeting me, and then at my sister, who was watching me with hope and slight anxiety in her eyes. I understood what this moment meant to her. It was a test, a way of asking if she was allowed to try again, if I would trust her judgment, if we could move past the fear that had almost destroyed us. I walked up to him and extended my hand. It's nice to meet you. Tell me about yourself. We went inside and sat in her living room, the same room where she had confronted a predator 3 years earlier. But it felt different now. She had redecorated, changed the furniture, painted the walls. This was a new space for a new chapter. And as Thaddeus told me about his life, his grown children, his late wife who had died of cancer 5 years earlier, his love of teaching history and coaching soccer, I watched my sister. She was relaxed, happy, but not desperate. She interrupted him occasionally to add details or make gentle jokes. They had inside references, shared laughter. This was real friendship that had grown into something more, not manufactured chemistry designed to manipulate. When he excused himself to use the bathroom, she leaned toward me. Well, he seems nice. That's it? Just nice? What do you want me to say? Do you approve? I took her hand. It doesn't matter if I approve. What matters is if you're happy and if you're safe. Are you? Yes to both. He's a good man, a real man. I know the difference now. Then I'm happy for you. Thaddeus came back and we talked for another hour. He told me about how they met, about their first awkward conversation in the teacher's lounge, about how he had asked her to coffee 6 times before she said yes, because she was so suspicious of his intentions. I didn't understand why she was so hesitant, he said with a gentle laugh. I thought maybe I was coming on too strong. It wasn't until our 5th or 6th date that she told me about what had happened. And then it all made sense. And you didn't run away? I asked. Why would I? Everyone has a past. Everyone has been hurt. What mattered to me was that she was brave enough to try again. I looked at him and saw sincerity in his eyes, the kind that can't be faked. This was not a performance. This was a decent person who had found another decent person and was grateful for the chance. I stayed for dinner, which they cooked together with easy coordination that spoke of time spent in each other's company. I watched them move around her kitchen, passing ingredients, stirring pots, working as a team. This was what a real partnership looked like, not the dramatic passion of those first months with the con artist, but something steadier and more sustainable, something built on mutual respect and shared values rather than manipulation and need. When I left that evening, my sister walked me to my car. Thank you for not warning him off, she said. I ran a background check on him before I came over. She laughed. Of course you did. And? Clean. No criminal record, no suspicious financial activity, no history of fraud or abuse. His late wife died exactly like he said, cancer. His kids exist and post about him on social media with genuine affection. He's exactly who he says he is. I know, I ran the same checks. We looked at each other and started laughing, the kind of deep, cathartic laughter that releases tension and fear. We had both learned the same lesson. Trust, but verify. Hope, but protect. Love, but stay alert. I'm proud of you, I said, for trying again. I know it must have been terrifying. It was. But you know what I realized? That man, the con artist, he didn't just steal my money and my time. He stole my ability to trust. And I decided I wasn't going to let him keep that. So I did the work. Therapy, the support group, all of it. And I learned that I can trust again, but differently, smarter. I'm glad. Me too. And Cress? I need you to know that I'm okay now. Really okay. You don't have to protect me anymore. You can just be my sister. I hugged her tight. I'll always protect you. That's what sisters do. But I promise to worry a little less. I'll take it. I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in years. The fear that had lived in my chest since the day I saw that first photo, the constant low-level anxiety that my sister was in danger, finally began to ease. She was okay. She was more than okay. She was thriving. My husband was waiting up when I got home, even though it was late. How'd it go? Good. Really good. I think he's genuine. But you'll keep checking. Probably. Old habits. He pulled me into his arms. That's why I love you. You're loyal to the bone. Is that a good thing? It's the best thing. We stood there in our quiet house, holding each other, and I felt grateful for the boring, stable life I had once thought was ordinary. There was nothing ordinary about trust, nothing ordinary about safety, nothing ordinary about love that didn't have to be earned or performed or paid for. These things were rare and precious, and I would never take them for granted again. The years that followed were gentle ones. My sister and Thaddeus dated for 2 years before getting married in a small ceremony at the Botanical Gardens. I was her maid of honor. His children welcomed her warmly, grateful their father had found happiness again. They bought a house together, smaller than the one she had lived in before, but filled with light and laughter and the kind of accumulated mess that comes from actually living rather than performing. The support group continued to grow and evolve. It became a registered nonprofit with my sister as the director. They secured grants to expand their programming and hired a part-time counselor to provide professional support for victims. The education materials they created were adopted by law enforcement agencies in 3 states. My sister was invited to consult on a federal task force studying financial exploitation. She told me once, years later, that she sometimes felt guilty about how much good had come from something so terrible. Like I'm profiting from my own victimization, she said. You're not profiting, you're preventing. There's a difference. I know, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't followed him, if you hadn't found that notebook. How much would he have taken from me? Everything, I said honestly. He would have taken everything. She nodded slowly. That's what I think too. The power of attorney was just the beginning. Once he had that, he would have drained my accounts, taken out loans in my name, maybe even tried to get me to mortgage the house. And I would have let him because I was so desperate to believe someone could love me. But I did follow him. And you're here. And you've saved countless other people from the same fate. Because of you. No. Because you were brave enough to act once you knew the truth. Because you turned your pain into purpose. That was all you. We were sitting on her back deck, watching the sun set over her garden. Thaddeus was inside making dinner. I could hear him humming, the same way my sister used to hum when she was happy. Do you ever think about him? I asked. About where he is now? Sometimes. But not the way I used to. For a long time I was angry. I wanted him to suffer the way I suffered. I wanted him to lose everything the way I almost lost everything. But now I just feel sad for him. Sad? He's spent his whole life pretending to be something he's not. Performing for an audience of victims. That's not living. That's just existing in a series of lies. In a way, I got the better deal. I was hurt, but I got to heal. I got to find something real. He'll never have that. He'll always be a performance artist playing for marks. It was a generous way to think about someone who had tried to destroy her, but that was who my sister was. She had taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and used it to become someone stronger, wiser, more compassionate. She had refused to let bitterness define her. As for me, I learned lessons too. I learned that love sometimes means doing things that feel crazy. I learned that protecting someone might mean invading their privacy, following strange men, breaking into apartments, gathering evidence. I learned that the boring, stable life I had built was actually the foundation of everything good in my world. And I learned that the bond between sisters is stronger than manipulation, stronger than embarrassment, stronger than pride. I also learned that there are predators everywhere, hiding behind charming smiles and tragic backstories and artistic pretensions. They target the vulnerable, the lonely, the hopeful. They are skilled and patient and utterly without remorse. And the only defense against them is vigilance, education, and the willingness to act when something feels wrong. If I could give advice to anyone reading this story, anyone who has a loved one involved with someone suspicious, it would be this. Trust your instincts, do the research, gather the evidence, but do it with love, not judgment. Your goal isn't to prove you're right, your goal is to protect someone you care about. And if they push you away, if they accuse you of jealousy or control or interference, keep showing up anyway. Keep loving them anyway, because the day they need you, the day they realize the truth, you need to be there. And to anyone who has been targeted by someone like this, anyone who has been made to feel stupid or naive or desperate for falling for a con, I want you to know this. It wasn't your fault. These people are professionals. They study human psychology. They know exactly which buttons to push, which vulnerabilities to exploit. The fact that you believed them doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And the fact that you survived, that you're still here, that you can tell your story, makes you stronger than you know. My sister survived. She more than survived. She found purpose and love and peace. You can too. It won't be easy. It will require help and time and work. But it's possible. And you deserve it. As I write this, It has been 7 years since that first photo appeared on my phone. 7 years since I started following a stranger to protect my sister. 7 years of growth and change and healing. My sister is happy, truly happy, in a way that makes my heart full every time I see her. The support group she started has helped more than 300 people navigate the aftermath of financial fraud. The educational programs she developed have reached thousands more. Sometimes people ask me if I regret what I did, if I feel guilty for invading his privacy, for following him, for the unconventional way I gathered evidence. The answer is no, not for a single second. I protected my sister. I helped stop a predator. I potentially saved dozens of other women from being victimized. That's not something to regret. That's something to be proud of. The truth is, we live in a world where people like him exist. People who see other humans as resources to be exploited rather than souls to be honored. We can't change that, but we can change how we respond. We can choose to be vigilant. We can choose to act. We can choose to protect each other, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's hard, even when it means doing things we never thought we'd do. That's what love is, really. Not the performance of romance that con artists specialize in. Not the grand gestures and passionate declarations. Real love is showing up when it's hard. Real love is doing the difficult thing because it's the right thing. Real love is being willing to be seen as the villain in someone else's story if it means keeping them safe. My sister and I, we're closer now than we've ever been. The experience that could have destroyed our relationship instead strengthened it. We've been through fire together and come out refined, tempered, unbreakable. That's the unexpected gift of crisis. It shows you who people really are, what they're made of, what they're willing to do for each other. And at the end of the day, after all the fear and anger and heartbreak, after the investigation and the trial and the healing, what remains is this. Two sisters, sitting on a deck in the fading light, watching the sunset while someone who truly loves one of them makes dinner inside. Simple, quiet, real. That's victory. That's justice. That's love. What did you think of this new type of story? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked this tale, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me to keep creating these wonderful stories. Until tomorrow, all my love.